Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Ask the Experts, the Nutrition Edition. I'm Lisbeth Irish, and I'm your host today. I am a registered dietitian for the New York State Office for the Aging, and I am the program manager for the SNAP-Ed New York program for older adults from NYSOFA. I have Meghan Young with me today. Meghan is a nutritionist and nutrition educator for the Orange County Cooperative Extension. And I'm going to have Meghan give you a little introduction because she knows most about herself.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Lisbeth. I am Meghan with our SNAP-Ed New York Hudson Valley team. So I work out of Orange County, but you will find me all around the Hudson Valley throughout our 9 counties that we work in. And so I work on some specific projects with our team, and one of them focuses on how we can reduce food waste. Well, part of it, it's a piece of it. All right.
Okay, well, Meghan's going to share some of her expertise around food waste and how to reduce it. But before we do that, I just want to remind our audience that you can put questions and your concerns in the chat, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. Thanks. Meghan, take it away.
All right. Well, good afternoon again, everyone. So I already introduced myself, but again, I am Meghan Young with our SNAP-Ed New York Hudson Valley team. And we do nutrition education throughout the Hudson Valley. So today Lisbeth invited me to talk about food waste with everyone. And it also happens to be National Nutrition Month, which we are celebrating throughout our SNAP-Ed New York teams and programs within the state. And so this year's theme is Fuel for the Future. And so being that we're talking about reducing food waste today, why it's important and why that matters, because by reducing food waste, we can help fuel ourselves, fuel future generations, and fuel the future of our planet.
Very good points.
So what if I told everyone that I was going to give you, and each person in your family, regardless, adult, child, whoever, was going to give everyone an extra about $450 right now? How would you feel? How happy would that make you? It'd make me really happy to just magically find that. And what would you do with it? I think I might pay my utility bill if I came across that much this month. So thinking about just, stumbling upon some extra money of a significant amount and how that would make us feel and what we might do with that, let's move into talking about food waste. So keep that money in mind. We're going to come back to it. So did you know that America does not eat 30 to 40% of its food? So on a whole, we throw out about 400 pounds of food per person annually, which equates to about $218 billion. That is more money than I could even imagine. So I will also note that you may find varying numbers and statistics out there regarding these rates, just because definitions vary and just how these studies were done. So usually there's a range, so that 30 to 40% of food that we don't eat falls within that range of what you might find in most studies. So $218 billion of food that we are not eating is a lot. And when we break that down to each person, that is about $450 annually. So for a family of 4, that could be $1,800 extra a year. That could be huge for, for what you would want to use it for. Yeah, I can't even imagine. I can't even off the top of my head say, what would I do with that right now if I had that extra money? But so So that's like the equivalent. So I'll give another perspective. So that's like saying if the United States was going to go grocery shopping and we were going to leave the store with 5 bags of food, and we're just going to drop 2 off in the parking lot and head home with the 3 remaining bags. So America is just leaving those bags of food in the parking lot. It's good food, and we're just going home with less than maybe what we're paying for. So that's just another way to think about it. Is a lot of food that we are not eating, and that's really the main point. So with that being said, what is food waste? Really simply, it's uneaten food. There are a lot of other terms that many of our government organizations use or environmental organizations use. You might hear wasted food, food waste, surplus food, food loss. But simply stated for our purposes, it's gonna mean uneaten food. We won't go into all the nitty-gritty details. So why does this matter? Why is it important? Why should we care about it? So wasted food is more than food. It's money. As we know, as I said, like you could have extra money in your pocket. It's money spent from farmers, from grocers, from restaurants. It's energy, if we're thinking of fuel, water, all the energy resources that it takes to produce food and get it where it's going to our homes. Water, people, many different people work different jobs within the food system. That's their labor. That's a lot of time, energy. Food is so much more. Wasted food is just more than just wasting food.
No, it's a lot of things go into food, and it's when we throw it out or don't use it, it's all those resources are just wasted.
Yeah, and it's sometimes hard to think about that. We're seeing the wilted greens in our refrigerator that may be starting to get a little watery in the bag. And we don't think about start to finish of how that, those leafy greens came to be in our refrigerator. So another way we can thinking about food waste is, so we take all the cropland in America, the wasted food, an area equivalent to between 18 to 28% of all the cropland that's used to grow food is ultimately not eaten. So that's about the size of New Mexico. And again, that's a range. So we can say 18 to 28% of all cropland in America used to grow food ultimately is not eaten, which we're looking at the size of New Mexico. It's pretty big.
Yeah.
And then another way to look at it, another little fact is, so if all of our country's wasted food was grown in one place, we took all that wasted food and we grew it in one place on this, we'll call it like a mega farm. That farm would cover roughly 80 million acres, which would be about 3/4 of the state of California.
Wow.
And then to grow that food on this farm, this wasteful farm, so to say, that food would consume all the water used in California and Idaho combined.
Wow. A lot of water.
It's a lot of water. And, water is a resource that is definitely in the news a lot more. There's been droughts, and where we get our water from, out Colorado River, out west, has been a source of it's running dry, and how our farmers, who's getting the water to use for what. So just another thing to think about in our minds when we talk about food waste. So as I said, it's more than food, and it's also food waste contributes to emissions, greenhouse gas emissions. So food waste is responsible for at least 2.6% of all greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, which is equivalent to the emissions of more than 37 million passenger vehicles on the road, or 1 in every 7 vehicles on the road.
Wow.
So that's pretty wild if you were out driving and you counted every 1 in 7 vehicles, to think that that represents the greenhouse gas emissions of food waste.
Huge.
Yeah. So a little guessing game now. We've talked somewhat about how much water goes into food, and how when we waste food, we're wasting water. But let's think about some common items, and let's guess how much water is used to grow 1 pound of these items. So first up, we have apples. So to grow 1 pound of apples, or think about it, if you bought a bag of 1 pound of apples and you didn't get around to using it, how much water usage, kind of in equivalent to terms, how many minutes in a shower of running that water do you think that would be equal to tossing out? Any guesses?
No idea.
Kind of equivalent to about a 43-minute shower. If you toss out a pound of apples, you're wasting about that much 43-minute shower.
That's a lot of water.
Yeah, that's a long shower. That my hot water wouldn't even go that long.
No, you'd run out of hot water.
So that just kind of helps to think about it. We're thinking about banana now. I had a banana with my lunch. Definitely thought about it because I was fresh working on this. If we threw out a pound of bananas, how many minutes of a shower running the water would that equal? Now
I'm
guess
not even gonna guess because I was never gonna guess the apples. So
Well, the banana is 42 minutes of
wow,
the shower running.
not
So
much of a difference.
not much of a difference there.
Big though. Wow.
Still a lot, still a long shower. And this is also, I'll say these numbers came from thinking about water. We have new regulations on shower heads. This was with old regulations that allowed our shower heads to have a stronger, more water flow. So it'd be even a longer shower under
Wow.
new regulations. But so next up, we have a chicken. So if we were to throw out a pound of chicken, about how much water are we looking at that went into raising that chicken that we're tossing out?
Wow. That's a whole different thing. If you had another fruit, I might be able to guess, but I have no idea for chicken.
Yeah, I threw this in here because I thought it was good to see, because that is a big
Oh my gosh. Whoa.
Yeah, so that's a 104-minute shower. If you water, that's how much water goes into, raising 1 pound of chicken.
Wow.
So if you buy chicken breasts and you don't get to using them in time, and you don't freeze them and you have to toss them, that's just a lot of water again. And finally, I have a tomato. Any ideas on the tomato?
I'm gonna guess about 60 minutes because tomatoes are juicier than apples, and
Believe it or not,
it's less. What?
It's a lot less. Yeah.
Oh, boy, I don't know what I'm talking about here.
I tricked you. I tricked you.
You sure did. Obviously, I don't see the relationship, so wow.
Yeah. So yeah, tomato, if you toss out a pound of tomatoes, that would be about 5 minutes worth of a shower that went into growing that you would be kind of tossing out inadvertently without knowing or thinking much about.
Wow.
So
So you don't really know. I mean, it's a lot, no matter how you define it. We can see that 3 out of 4 really used a lot of water. So
yeah, so all of our food, as we were saying, is more than just food. It has a lot more resources that go into getting that food to our homes. So that leads us to, okay, so where is food wasted? Where are we wasting it? And so it's wasted throughout the whole food system, different ways. So from the production of it, from growing it, producing it, to the distribution of it, the distribution and the manufacturing. Food waste happens at the consumer level, stores, restaurants, other municipalities that have large food services. It's going to waste for different reasons there. And then you have our homes, our home consumption of food, where it also goes to waste. So, different things happen at each of these stages to waste, to contribute to food waste. Really the largest, the most amount of food waste happens at that consumption level. And so that retailer, restaurants, and that home consumption of it. That's where the United States has the most food waste. And interestingly enough, other countries kind of are flipped in that situation, and more of their food waste might happen earlier in the food chain. So food for thought. Oops.
So we have personally, it looks like we have more control because it's happening where we buy things and where we prepare things than maybe in other countries. So individuals have more control over it.
Yeah, and we also, to think about, we don't always think we can make a difference individually, but our buying habits collectively can, kind of dictate what kind of food is sold, and what we're willing to buy. If we're not willing to buy the kind of the apple that has a little dent in it or a little bruise, that's not what's going to make it to our stores, because that's not what people want to buy. So collectively, as a whole, we can make a big difference. All right. So then it's like, okay, well, what foods are being wasted? So as I said, loss and waste occur at all the stages within the food chain, with the majority happening at our consumer level. And so here's just a quick picture of, now you'll see it says surplus food, but we're just thinking of all food that's not been eaten, edible and inedible, relating to this. And this is on a large scale. This is not necessarily from our homes, but this is as a whole. So you really can see those perishable items are not being consumed the most.
That's a lot of fruits and vegetables in that department.
It's a lot of fruits and vegetables. And so if we think back to how long the shower is running, how long we're running the water, the water that goes into growing that produce. Yeah, it's a lot. And also to note, the prepared foods is quite high. And this site, Refed, they have another tool. If someone was interested, they could really, if someone liked numbers and like to see patterns and data, that it kind of tracks. You can track it at different levels of what's being wasted, but you can see that the increase in our use of prepared foods over the years. So we have increased our reliance. I don't like to say reliance. We've increased, how much we use prepared foods. So just something else to think about.
Yeah. So that's a source of increasing over time waste in that. Wow.
So with that, kind of what food is being wasted, about 21% of food accounts for the waste going into our landfills.
Ooh.
And so it is the number one contributor by weight of solid waste going into our landfills, according to the EPA. So, and only a very small portion of only about 5% of all food is in the waste stream is currently recycled by composting or other ways they refer to as anaerobic digestion, which can make, it's pretty cool, but it's a small percent, can make like fuel from it, energy source. And so why does this matter? Oh, and I'll say too, relating to food waste in New York State, food waste makes up about 18% of the waste stream in New York. So it's around that national number of 21%. So why does this matter about food going into the landfill? It matters because it's a lot of food going into the landfill. As we mentioned, it's a lot of resources being used to produce that food and distribute it and get it to our homes. And so it matters because it could feed hungry people. About 1 in 10 Americans are struggling to feed their families. So we could be providing food for more people. It can feed our animals. It can feed farmers' animals and help reduce costs. Another way, parts of our food system could save some money, save money on feed, especially since costs have gone up. As I mentioned, industrial use, that anaerobic digestion of is a way to turn food waste into energy sources, to recover energy, and composting is important. But landfill is the last place we would like food waste to end up. And what happens, I've been asked by some peers, well, why is it so bad that the banana peel goes in the landfill? Won't it just decompose there? And yes, it will eventually decompose, but food that goes into the landfills, they don't have, you pile that food on, that waste on, so there's very little oxygen flow. And what happens is in the landfills, our food waste is a large producer of methane gas, which is a greenhouse gas. And so it is not good for our environment to have a lot of methane. It's a very potent greenhouse gas.
So it's really not breaking down safely like it would in a compost pile. It's producing greenhouse gases because there's it's in with everything else.
Yep. And composting uses oxygen.
Right.
to help break down the food. So that gas isn't produced and it then isn't trapped as well. So composting, if one can, as a last before going into the landfill.
Hmm.
So I've given a lot of information, some of it a little like not heavy, but like, it's like, oh, wow, eye-opening.
It's a lot. It's impressive. I mean, it certainly makes a dent in, our perception of what food waste means.
Yeah. So now we can, if we think about, I said America's food waste happens at that, most of it happens at that, a large majority happens at that consumption level. So if we think about our homes, we think about ourselves, can you think, is there food that's going to waste in your household? And I will say most Americans don't want to admit, most of us don't want to admit that food does go to waste, and that it's found that Americans underestimate, underreport how much does get thrown out. So it's about the Natural Resources Defense Council has found that approximately 3/4 of people believe they waste less food than the average American. So no one wants to admit they threw out that bunch of parsley that they bought because they only needed one tablespoon of fresh parsley in their recipe. I get it. I threw out some pizza the other day because I didn't get to it in time. There are plenty of other things, unfortunately, if I'm being honest, that do get thrown out in my fridge. I'm cooking for two. So sometimes there is recipes make more than I need, even if I'm trying to be careful. So if we just think about that in our own minds, about what we're throwing out in our own home, just being more conscious of it.
There is a question we have on composting. People want to know, someone wants to know if individuals should try to compost if they have the space to do it. And I mean, my answer would be yes, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a yes to that question. Not everyone, it's not easy for everyone, depending on where you live. If you have land, you live in an apartment, you live in a city, there are different challenges to it. But if you have the ability to, and you can, go for it. It's pretty easy. Your local cooperative extension can help you out with resources on composting to get you going. Also, your county's resource recovery agencies often have resources that they can share with people about how you can get started at home. I know our resource recovery agency in Ulster County also offers certain times of the year, they'll sell composting bins, and they'll offer workshops to help people learn how. So there's a lot out there if you're looking to get started with it. And we encourage you to.
And another idea that I didn't really, well, I guess I thought of it, but I have a son who lives in LA, and they started in their area. The waste removal people are taking compost materials, and you separate your garbage and they take those kind of items and they compost them. So eventually maybe different municipalities could do that too, for people who live in apartments or can't really do it themselves easily.
Yeah, I'm hopeful, because I also think it could, trash removal is expensive if you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
And by being able to compost it, I think we could reduce that trash removal cost.
Yeah. Yeah, you might be able to get by with a much smaller.
Right. So that was a great question about the composting, which, leads me into the what can I do? What can you do at home? And so there's some simple things we can do. We mentioned composting. I didn't put it on my list here just because not everyone has easy access to it. So these are some things that most people could do at home. So by planning, we can, if we plan our meals, plan out, make a list of what we want to have for the week, how much we need, and then you'll be prepared to and stick to that plan without just going to the store maybe and buying a little bit of this and a little bit of that without an actual plan. And this can help you save money too, because you'll stick to that plan. So that goes along with checking your pantry, making that list, checking your pantry, what you already have. Maybe you have some vegetables that need to be used in your fridge. So looking at that and seeing what can I make? What do I need to maybe make a soup or a stew or a casserole? And that will help your planning as well. So you're only buying what you need. In addition, we can shop smart. We take that list and we stick to it at the store. If you're going hungry, you might want to try and have a snack before you go, so you're not tempted to throw additional items in the cart. I also say, watch buying bulk isn't for everyone. It's easy, if something's on sale and the unit pricing is good, but maybe if you're like me and it's a family of two, you're cooking for yourself, maybe, it doesn't make sense to buy that larger item because you're not going to be able to use it all in time.
Or if you do buy it, sometimes subdividing it and, storing it, freezing something, you can't do that with everything. But if you, really want to do that, then. Yeah,
absolutely. And meat is a great example of something you can do that with. Shop those sales and then, divide it out into the portions that you would cook it with and put it in the freezer so you can use it at a later time.
Yeah, I used to do that with my family. I would buy a large amount of something and then individually wrap it and put it in the freezer. But you have to label it because otherwise you'll look there and you won't know what it is.
Labeling is important so that you know what has to be used when, and so that it doesn't get thrown out. Some other things we can do, as we were just talking about, how you store and how you freeze things can make a big difference. If you're storing it, you want to make sure you're storing it in a proper container, airtight container, or I think I've talked to people about their bins in their fridge, and now the name is escaping me because I'm on the spot. The vegetable and fruit bin
hydrator thing,
in your fridge, they do work if you separate out your greens and put them in a separate bin, and you put your fruit with like peppers, and there are some other foods that go well together in that bin. That will help each of them stay fresher longer because the ethanol gas that the produce produces as it ripens varies depending on the produce. So
yeah, sometimes it can influence how long the other things will last, right? That gas that's coming off naturally from a fruit might, make salad greens mush before their time.
And that's why your bananas should be on the counter away from everything else. Or if you do put them in the fridge, which some people do, that you are keeping them away from other items, that bananas will help other produce ripen a lot faster.
Not necessarily what you want.
No, and you also don't want that banana taste on everything that might permeate. But so how you store things in your fridge, where you store them matters. So you want to colder food, you want to store food that needs to be kept colder, further below, because warmer air is at the top of the fridge.
And back sometimes too. I know.
Mhm. So, and then if you have a freezer, making use of your freezer, as we talked about, being able to portion out foods and package it and freeze it is super helpful if you can do that. Again, anything you're storing, even in your fridge, make sure you have a date on it if you're not going to remember when you put it in there or when you last used it, when you bought it. Same with the freezer, so that you know how long you have to use it. There is a great food safety app. It's called Food Keeper. So if you look up Food Keeper, it's it's a foodsafety.gov created it. And so it offers an easy reference if you're like, oh gosh, how long does this last for? How long is this cream cheese good for? You can look up a bunch of different items and it will give you some guidelines, unopened, opened, how long it might last in the freezer or stored in the fridge. So
I think people get confused about expiration dates, sell-by dates, use-by dates. There's a question about that. It can get very confusing. So that'd be a great resource for kind of sorting that out. Like, how long really can I keep it?
Yeah, and that brings up another great point, is talking about food date labels. And with the exception of infant formula, those dates on food are a guideline for when the best quality will be.
Right.
So sometimes, just smelling it is the best way, even if it's gone, if the milk has gone beyond that date. Smelling it, if it still smells good, it's probably still good. That's just a quality freshness date that's on there. But like I said, that the exception is infant formula. That is not a guideline. Follow that.
But you can't smell other things like bacteria growth and things like that, right? Like if like something like meat that hasn't been stored at the right temperature, it might smell okay, but it could be not okay. Right?
Yeah.
If you
So
leave it out too long and then you put it back in the refrigerator and all that.
yeah.
Stuff.
So being mindful of how long you let food sit out without being stored in properly. Also, some other things, if something doesn't smell, maybe it looks off, it has a different color. Sometimes meat will start to get slimy, maybe. So there are other things you can look for if you can't smell it. You're not going to eat something that isn't, if it looks off-putting or if it smells off-putting, it is beyond its prime. So
yeah, I know the FDA says that you can store leftovers that have been cooked 7 days, but I personally, after 3 days, if I'm not going to eat it in 3 days, I freeze it because the quality may not be so wonderful from like 4 to 7 days.
yeah.
Like we had something that I ate for lunch today, but it was a leftover, but I said, oh, I got to freeze the rest of it because I'm not going to eat this again. I don't want to. I've already had it twice. So I'm going to freeze that product that was a leftover. Not after, I didn't cook it. I saved some of it and put it in the freezer.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to look at leftovers too.
And I also made sure it was really hot when I cooked it. It has to get up to 165 if you cook something that's a leftover. Otherwise, it may not be safe.
Yeah. So that goes into, so we kind of jumped ahead, which is all good. Preparing what you need. So, really being mindful about, are you making more than you need? Are you making more than is going to be eaten? It all goes into that planning and shopping. Everything kind of leads into each other, that we're preparing only what we need, and that then we're going to love our leftovers. We're going to embrace them. And they can help us save, if you prepare a little bit more than what you need for one meal and it makes an extra meal, that can help you save time for the next night. And also by preparing that, you're saving yourself money from having to go out to eat. But embrace the leftovers. I'm not very good at freezing leftovers. I hope to get a little bit work on that myself. But Lisbeth, as you said, you'll freeze the leftovers so that you're not eating it every day for a week.
Well, sometimes what we do too, we serve from the stove, because what I've found out, or from the kitchen, if I grew up with family style where you put everything in bowls, that makes a whole lot of extra dishes in my opinion, but it also tempts you sometimes to overeat, like you think you got to finish what's in the bowl. So what we do is we serve portions. The hard part at my house is the person who serves the portions wants to give me too much. And I'm like, no, I am not a 6-foot woman and I don't play field hockey. So yeah, I don't really need that amount.
Right.
And sometimes we'll freeze them right away because, for people trying to control their portions, if it's already in the freezer, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to get it out of the freezer so I can have more. Once it's, in the freezer, I'm not getting it out to eat it now and reheat it,
Yeah.
So it's a way of not wasting things by thinking we have to finish it too. That's not necessarily food waste, but it's more than I need.
Exactly. So yeah, any other questions or is that?
Somebody wants to know, if your freezer compartment is on the top, what's the coldest part of the refrigerator? Still on the bottom?
I believe it would still be at that bottom
Yeah.
level of your fridge. Yeah.
Yeah. And we noticed that if you have to be careful with some refrigerators not to put things that you don't want to get too cold in the back, but some things, like I put my milk in the back because it stays colder back there than in the front.
Yeah.
Nothing too good about lukewarm, sort of cold milk. Yeah.
No. And also I'll add in there, if you're using your freezer, it really runs most efficiently when you're actually it's mostly full.
Right.
So if you're rotating through food that you're freezing and using it and then restocking it, it is going to run most efficiently, which will also save some energy usage in the home as well. So
one of the things I do with leftovers too, since I always like to share my little things, because my parents grew up in the Depression, so they were very thrifty. We used to say that was cheap, but thrifty is a nicer word. And my mother would repurpose, and I do the same thing. I would repurpose things. Like we made a pot of chili and we took that chili that was left over and put it in some tortillas and made like burritos. It's kind of different, but the same. Or I might take leftover chicken and some vegetables from a meal and turn it into a chicken soup, a really hearty chicken soup that I might have for lunch.
And that's a great way to use leftovers, because then you're not so bored with I get bored with like eating the same. I can't do it. So that helps to vary it up and use the leftovers, but make it feel like a new meal.
Oh yeah, definitely. I actually develop like aversions to food if I eat them over and over again. I'm like, oh, I don't want to hear about that food if I've had it a million times,
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of, I think I make it like a game when it comes to saving money and time and trying to eat healthy at the same time. I kind of like try to be as creative as I can. That way it doesn't feel like a chore, I kind of make it a game.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and if you are planning, what you're going to eat, if you're trying to have a plan, you're making a list, trying to utilize leftovers, it will save, you'll get the hang of it and you will start saving time, saving that money, all while still eating healthy.
Yeah. I mean, those are my goals. And again, if I can check all those boxes, I feel like I won, you know,
Exactly.
instead of making it like a real chore, which,
Yeah.
you know, yep, it is a win-win. You know, if you can save, I'd take that $450 actually and put it in my food budget because it's getting hard.
Yes, food is going up.
It's really hard.
What I used to be able to get at the grocery store and pay now, I'm like, oh my gosh, how much is this going to be?
Yeah, we've
Um,
noticed a big difference. So I think our snapadnewyork.org website is amazing because it's got nutrition that's easy to understand. It's got all these ways of storing food. The tips sheets are great. There's recipes that aren't expensive to make compared to maybe some of the other ones you see. You know, and they're kind of mainstream recipes. There's some different ones, but there's a lot of,
Yeah.
you know, easy kind of recipes that anybody would like.
Yeah, and it gives you the cost breakdown
Yeah.
on the site, and it gives you a shopping list too. So look at that. We're checking off some of those
And the meal
boxes.
planning thing too, that little calendar thing that's on there. Where
Yeah.
you plan your meals for a week or a month.
And we also have, there are the the recipe demonstration videos, which you see a recipe that interests you, a lot of them have the demonstration video with it, so you can check it out before you fully commit.
And you know what? NYSOFA, we do recipe demonstration videos. Wendy Beckman, who's another New York State Office for the Aging dietitian, she does food demos and they're on our website. In fact, we have a new one coming out March 24th at 12:30. We're going to release another one. That's a Friday, but every month we release a new demo video.
That's
And
great.
they're on our archive. You know, you can see any of them by going to the archives on our website.
I'm gonna have to check them out now.
Yes, they're really, you know, we work with another agency at New York State and the productions, they're really great. Wendy's really good at it. And she picks out some great things. I help her when she's behind the scenes.
You're selling me on it.
She's the star. I'm the sous chef, you know, to kind of help out. But they're fun, you know, and she's really good at putting together some great things. Well, I want to thank Meghan for being with us today. She was a great expert. I mean, a real expert with lots of great data. And yep, we can save time, money, and eat healthy and help our planet. That's a pretty good summary of what we were talking about today. So thank you so much. I hope you'll come back and be our expert another time.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, Elizabeth. This was so much fun.
It was fun, wasn't it?
Yes.
Well, I hope you'll join us for next month's Ask the Expert. The April episode will be on Friday the 14th at 1 p.m. I think we're going to be talking about container guards. Not absolutely sure yet, but you know, that's a fun topic. And we probably are going to have two experts on that. Because I'm certainly not. I do it, but I'm not an expert. And like I said, Wendy's new food demo will be out on the 24th of this month. This episode of Ask the Experts was funded by the United States Department of Agriculture, and they are an equal opportunity provider. And thanks again, Meghan, and we'll see everybody else next time. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.